You know what? I'm not gonna rank the Best Picture nominees this year. This was a clever ruse. I'm here instead to read you the manuscript to my newest book. Prologue. There was a wind, and there was a murder.
Mark, is this the prologue to your newest book?
I forgot I invited you. Here is how this works. I'm gonna rank all of the nominees as though I was filling out my Best Picture bracket, and Nitish is gonna rank all the nominees too, in that same way. We then combine our rankings into one Frankenstein's list that averages out our two scores. So by the end of this, nobody will be happy. I did my ranking based on the order I personally thought these movies deserved to win, and not necessarily by my preference, though obviously those two tend to correlate quite strongly.
I voted similarly. I think one of the most interesting trends this year is the interplay between execution and ambition. I think we agree on lots of the list, but I think where we do have some disagreements, it's based off of our differing views on what's more important to a film's success, whether or not it was executed well or whether or not it tried to do a lot.
Number 10. So, Nitish and I both ranked Elvis at the bottom of our list. Thus far, there is peace.
This is the only movie on here I actively disliked. I'll start by discussing the one redeeming quality, Austin Butler's performance. It's admittedly really good. Much has been made of the lengths he went to imitate the mannerisms of the iconic performer, and I definitely wouldn't be disappointed with the Oscars should he win Best Actor, although he wouldn't be my choice. But the rest of the movie is bad. The editing is lurid and frenetic, a choice that fits poorly with the frequently garish color palette. There are moments of great color balance, but there are also many more where the film is weirdly muted, or a few colors dominate unpleasantly. In principle, this could work, perhaps to accentuate the consumerist violence of Las Vegas or something, but it doesn't, because it seems to be muted in all the wrong spots. The acting aside from Butler's is just bad. Tom Hanks turns in an awful performance. Tom Hanks, you might say incredulously, an awful performance, but it's truly terrible, and if you don't believe me, you should watch the movie. I agree with Mark, it's a little fun in a weird way, but it's definitely not good. This movie also suffers from a revisionist desire to lionize Elvis, and to do that, this film turns black musicians that Elvis was inspired by into props that Luhrmann brandishes at us in an attempt to persuade us that Elvis was staunchly committed to the cause of racial equality. Robert Daniels from Roger Ebert explains it better than I can, and I'm quoting his review here. Too often the film slips into Great White Hope syndrome, whereby Presley is the sincere white hero unearthing the exotic and sensual black artists of his era, who Daniels argues exists in the film, quote, solely as either bulletin board cheerleaders or alluring beings from a far-off land. Elvis the person wasn't racist, but his legacy is complicated, particularly in his relationship to art produced by black musicians. Luhrmann's film, in my view, doesn't do a good enough job of exploring that space. Doja Cat's single for the movie Vegas features samples from the original Hound Dog by Big Mama Thornton. The film takes painstaking care to show Elvis's humiliation when he has to sing his version of Thornton's song to a puppy on live TV, but it makes no mention of the fact that Thornton received a paltry $500 for the song from Elvis. In one concert, she referred to Hound Dog as, quote, a song I got robbed on. I appreciate sincerely that the film tried to tackle these knotty and challenging issues of cultural appropriation. But these are issues that require a subtlety and care that Luhrmann's Elvis lacks, and the result ends up uneven and unconvincing.
Look, Nitish and I both ranked Elvis at the bottom of our lists, but I am not going to be nearly as harsh on this movie. I'm not going to tell you it's good. I'm not going to tell you it's historically accurate or unproblematic. I'm not going to defend that part at all. That's just bad. But what I will tell you is that Austin Butler deep-throats his microphone.
Lord have mercy.
And what am I supposed to do? Not like that? I was going to do that too for the video, but have you seen my mic? Lord have mercy. Though it is worth acknowledging that the movie is, let's say, unhelpful, I struggled to take this movie too seriously myself, and I believe that worked to its benefit, in my opinion. Every musical performance felt like a concert, and Baz Luhrmann draws every visual and auditory tool in his drug shed of dreams to immerse you in this spectacle. Baz Luhrmann is most known for his highly eccentric and maximum-est way of filmmaking, stuffing the movie full with lavish and incredibly detailed sets that you will probably never even get to see through an editing style which I can only describe as violent. It's not going to work for everyone, and the viewing audience is likely to be physically hurt during the experience, but it kept me entertained, and I am the only one who matters. Austin Butler is a legitimately phenomenal lead. I think he goes significantly beyond impression to fully embody Presley through various phases in his full and varied life. He hits those emotional beats very well, and when he is on stage, he feels like that sort of feral animal the movie needs him to be. He really sells it. Tom Hanks is awful, but this is one of those bad performances that I love. I have no notes, and I welcome you as my sleep paralysis demon.
Santa Claus. Here comes Santa Claus, right down Santa Claus Lane. Vixen and all the rain.
So you can tell my thoughts are mixed. I'm hot and I'm cold. I'm yes and I'm no. I'm confusing my music references. The things that legitimately worked about the movie did connect with me, and the things that did not work were, for the most part, fun to roll with and meme on. I am inclined to respect Elvis more than some of its other, blander, but objectively superior music biopic brethren. I'm not putting it any higher, though. Number 9. Nitish and I both ranked Avatar: Way of Water as number 9. I want to be a little quick with this entry because, 1, I don't have too much to say, and 2, this movie has not been digitally released, so I don't have any footage to work with. I ranked Avatar: Way of Water number 9, even though I might personally like it more than my 826. I maintain that the Avatar films are very solid and immersive. There are not many films that can suck me into their worlds quite like Way of Water and its predecessor, and I truly admire these movies as experiences. However, if I am ranking these movies by which I would want to win the big prize, it's just hard to root for a solid but fairly standard sequel to the highest grossing movie ever made, especially when Top Gun Maverick is in the running too and is a much better film. The fact that the Twitter algorithm likes to remind me on a daily basis that Loak has potato peeler abs, I do not seek this material out. I have no idea why it's doing this to me. It might have cast some sort of subconscious tint on my ranking too. For as many grand and spectacular moments, there were also blah moments, like that time the movie randomly became Free Willy. If you gave the guy a baseball cap and replaced the whale with a dog or something, you got the plot to a 90s Disney Channel movie. I genuinely liked the movie though. I'm not too cool for Avatar by any means, I just wouldn't vote for it.
This movie is pretty enjoyable. Its special effects are really impressive. And that's literally all I got. I'm keeping this review short, you see, so I can read a huge section from an unrelated essay later in this episode.
Wait, what?
So, for this movie, if you're into sci-fi, just watch
Nitish?
Dune. And if you're into the blockbuster movie experience, just stay tuned for us talking about Top Gun Maverick. Spoiler alert, it's way better.
I hate so much about the things that you choose to be.
We can now anticipate an abundance of new Avatar films. Look forward to Avatar, the Tolkien Rider, Avatar, the Quest for Iwa, and Avatar, the Seed Bearer.
So, to be honest, I can't entirely tell if this is a bit you're doing and these are the actual titles of the movies.
These are the actual titles of the movies.
Huh.
Number 8. Nitish and I have both ranked Triangle of Sadness as our number 8. We have been agreeing with a lot lately. Weird. Swedish filmmaker Ruben Östlund creates a movie filled with artistic contradictions. It is simultaneously prestige and lowest denominator. It is immaculate in its style and sloppy with its storytelling. There are plot threads and characters that seem essential only to disappear, suddenly, without the least bit of razzle or dazzle. And there are characters who are extremely prominent in the second half who are nothing more than cameos before. And I think this unusual structure fits the themes of the story and the flip of perspective thing they were going for, and I really enjoyed these individual parts. Especially the second half of Dali de Leon's character. But a part of me wonders if I would resonate with the movie more if I got to follow a more consistent cast of characters. Slight spoilers for the next 20 minutes. Okay, if you're watching this on an iPhone, just tap the screen twice if you're not up for that. Starting now. Just imagine if Woody Harrelson's communist captain was also stranded on this island with this bunch of former one-percenters, and tell me that's not a missed opportunity. It would be an entirely different movie, but it would have been a 10 out of 10 and you cannot tell me otherwise. I can see why someone would not like Triangle of Sadness. The film can be meandering and slow at points. Its message can be blunt and not that deep. The 20 minutes of people vomiting probably doesn't help either, but what the movie lacks in cohesion, it makes up for in entertainment value, and that counts for a lot with me. If I had a nickel for every time a Best Picture nominated movie brutally kills a donkey, I would have 2 nickels. Which isn't a lot, but...
I don't disagree with anything Mark said, and I think that this film is pretty good social satire. But it is obvious social satire. Every beat in this movie is extremely predictable. The film still does a very good job with them, portraying well, for example, the different socioeconomic strata of society, but I don't think this film does anything novel. After finishing this film, I couldn't help but feel like there was something missing. I liked it well enough, but I didn't love it. And I think this movie suffers chiefly from the existence of far better alternatives. I saw someone on Twitter that said that this was Scandinavian Parasite, and all I've wanted to do since was just watch Parasite.
Number 7.
Yet again, Mark and I agree, which is very unusual for us. We both agreed that The Fabelmans is number 7. This is a really good movie, I can't lie. Spielberg manages to give Sammy an impressive amount of interiority. You can't help but love him and his ingenuity, as he manages to film these incredible movies as a kid. The Fabelmans also gives Spielberg's filmmaking an interesting autobiographical arc, and the various functions that film has to Spielberg is fascinating. An act of love to his family, an attempt to fit in, an act of empathy with his father's experience of war, a way to constrain childlike anxieties and control them. The Fables has a lot of really interesting, evocative things to say about the power of movie making, and it says them all pretty quietly, but it does do a great job, and it is worth a watch. Spielberg's direction here is also insane. He's one of the GOATs, so this isn't a huge surprise, but his control over light and shot composition and his actors is just absurd. It's not as good as some of the other entries on this list. It's not as good as Matt Reeves' direction in The Batman Who Got Robbed, by the way, but it's still really good. Performances are also great. Michelle Williams is phenomenal and gives a really impressive, sympathetic performance. It's Oscar-worthy, but this year the competition is very stiff. Paul Dano also gives an incredible performance. It's not as good as his performance as the Riddler in Matt Reeves' The Batman Who Got Robbed, by the way, but it's still really good. This film is worth your time, and it moved me. But all the other films that we're about to talk about just moved me more.
I enjoyed The Fabelmans most as a series of great clips, and this is largely to do with stellar cameos. David Lynch appears briefly as Sammy's idol and legendary director John Ford, and Judd Hirsch psychotically ranting about sticking his head into the mouths of lions as he dramatically rips his shirt open and smacks the fuck out of a young Steven Spielberg is cinema to me. The main cast might be just as good as the cameos. Gabriel Labelle as the titular Stephen Fabelman is my pick for the most underrated performance of the year, managing to pull off a delicate balance of funny and angst. Paul Dano makes what could have been easily a stock and standard dad very endearing. Seth Rogen plays the part of sad, sexy Steelio girl clown man perfectly. I admit I was more mixed on Michelle Williams as Sammy Spielberg's whimsical and neurotic mother. I had a hard time figuring out how I was supposed to feel whenever she was on the screen, which is clearly what they're going for, but I found it distracting. When I think of this movie, I think of great moments, like the headlight stance, John Ford's landscape monologue, the train crash recreation, Sammy's estranged great uncle showing up out of the blue to steal Dano's supporting actor nomination, and Sammy's parents announcing their divorce to the kids, in which there is one absolutely horrifying but personally relatable detail that stuck with me. Sammy experiences this personal and traumatizing moment along with the rest of his family, but he's not being entirely present because he is still thinking about how he can turn this into art. These scenes are truly great. It's just that the movie lacks the connective tissue that holds these scenes together. And by connective tissue, I think I mean direction. The movie is surprisingly understated past the first 20 minutes. It feels as though the film benefited more from Spielberg's perspective rather than his artistry. Number 6. I ranked Women Talking as my number 6, Nitish ranked it as number 5. Whoa. Guys, my film tastes are awful and you shouldn't listen to me. But they're better than Nitish's, so I'll keep going anyway. I think Women Talking handles its sensitive topics in an accessible way without compromising on the severity of what is going on. The screenplay is stellar, the dialogue is sharply written, and delivered in a very engaging way by engaging performers. Women Talking paints a vivid and oppressive picture of this isolated religious community. When it is so casually mentioned that the movie took place in 2010, I nearly flopped out of my seat from the impact. You understand where each of these characters are coming from? You understand their hurt, their anger, and why, despite all of that, they can't help but laugh sometimes. It's just... I don't like the color grading. I know it's tried and stock to criticize the movie for being too desaturated, especially when it does other things so well. Everybody is sick of hearing about the color grading. I am too, but I think it is a genuine problem. The shots are legitimately nice, but even in the data room, I couldn't tell what was going on without squinting my eyes just a little bit. This would normally be just an aesthetic problem, and one I could get over, but 1, why should I have to? And 2, with a dialogue-centric film such as this, I struggled to tell a lot of these characters apart for a good portion of the film. Particularly Jessie Buckley and Claire Foy's characters. This could be my problem in part. I am pretty bad with names and faces in movies by default, but it affected my experience, and I'm the one ranking the film, so you're stuck in Crazy Town with me. Hello, Future Mark here. So I found out as I was getting footage that the movie oddly enough looks way better on my computer screen than it did in the theater or on the TV screen when I tried watching it for a second time. It's still not ideal, but if you're otherwise planning on not seeing the movie because of the color grading, consider seeing this movie on your computer instead. It will look better on a smaller screen, I think.
This movie is very good, but I think a few small issues and one admittedly more significant issue keep this from being higher up on my list. First, let's talk about what Women Talking did really well. The film focuses on women, talking about how they're going to respond to an awful series of attacks on them by the men in the colony, and it gives each of its main characters an extraordinary amount of depth and care. I understand the viewpoints of each character not just in the abstract, but as deeply held beliefs with emotional bases. The dialogue is excellent, and has the cast discuss complicated issues of male responsibility for violence in a patriarchal society, forgiveness, God, and much more in a way that feels sincere and organic. A key part of this is the way that the movie treats faith. I think this movie did an excellent job of showing off the characters' variety of religious experiences, showing us how their Christian Mennonite faith provided them with powerful tools to critique the system they were in, and also gave them solace and purpose in the face of such violence. Characters also have crises of faith that feel, again, sincere and organic, and it also gave them solace and purpose in the face of such violence. This is all enabled by what is probably the most stacked cast on this list. Tons of incredible performances, but my favorite was Jessie Buckley's Marike, who has a moment where she awkwardly joins in a laugh that conveys such depth of character and emotion that I couldn't possibly describe it here. When I saw it, I actually just got up, made a note to write it down, and mention it in this review. But there are a few drawbacks. Despite a very good score, I was a little underwhelmed by the pacing, direction, and cinematography. On a film so dialogue-rich, these mistakes stuck out like a sore thumb. The dialogue is also very good, and while it feels, as I've said like 4 times now, sincere and organic, it also raises philosophical quandaries that don't get dived into fully. This isn't a mark against the film exactly. If a film managed to have both the extraordinary character work it did have, and additionally answer like 30 incredibly complex philosophical issues, it wouldn't just be in the running for my 5th favorite Oscar film of the year, but it would have been in the running for my favorite film of all time. But I did think it was noting that as incredible as the dialogue in this film is, there is a little bit of room to grow. Where exactly, I don't have any sharp ideas. I'm far less talented than Polly, and the job of a critic is way easier than the job of a writer. This is a pretty mild criticism, and I don't want you to walk away with anything less than a stellar impression of the script. Except, in one particular area. While I appreciate the trans representation in this film, the trans character, August Winters Melvin, is pretty one-dimensional, and isn't really given much to do. Polly is clearly a sharp and incredible writer, and while she avoids the most obvious pitfalls, I would have appreciated a stronger focus on Melvin and the chance to give him a more full characterization, something that Polly is clearly able to do.
I hope you are enjoying this video and are not offended by our collectively right opinions. But let's say that you hypothetically wanted more videos on the Oscars like this. Maybe you would be into weekly 250-word movie reviews? Perhaps you just like my face and want to see more of it. Well, please consider giving this video a like and subscribe to this channel, and give us a ring-a-ding-bing of that little bell icon too. Number 5. Technically, these next two entries are a tie. I ranked All Quiet on the Western Front number 5 and Nitish ranked it number 4, but we hashed it out and came to an agreement. All Quiet on the Western Front is based off of the German novel written by Erich from Rock, a veteran of World War I. All Quiet was, to a notable extent, autobiographical, and its message was impactful in its time, regardless of country. The book would later inspire a film adaptation in 1930 that became the third ever Best Picture winner at the Oscars, and it would be banned in its home country as the decade went on when that party we know took over found the masses were not as willing to join in on another war, likely due to the kind of lingering trauma represented in the novel, and they blamed the literature for reminding people of the fresh horrors of war. The author escaped before things got too dangerous, but his youngest sister was not so lucky, being explicitly told before her death that, "Your brother is unfortunately beyond our reach. You, however, will not escape us." That is to say, the original novel had an impact in its day by preserving the atrocities of war in amber for all to see, just as A Government of Monsters was about to do it all again. Berger's modern adaptation had big shoes to fill, to carry on the original's message for a new century filled with new monsters. By looking at that amber once more, we can see how the technology may have changed, and the aesthetic too, but war remains just as pointless, and its casualties just as preventable. I think the modern All Quiet manages to do that, perhaps in a rather conventional way that does not take too many artistic risks, but that way is nonetheless effective. I don't think the movie gets enough credit for how good it looks. All the promotional material makes the movie feel gray and muddy and practically monochrome, but that mostly describes the battle scenes, which stand in effective contrast to moments of peace, which are depicted as colorful and vibrant. The way its shots are staged makes the movie well deserving of its cinematography nod and probable win, and the artistry on display helped me swallow some of its darker subject material, still allowing the brutality to kick in rather than numbing me entirely. There were some moments from the book I wish made it into the movie. The book truly feels original in its detail, while the movie sometimes feels like a standard film of its sort that you could see today. With that said, the movie added a whole slew of new visuals and sequences, taking advantage of its medium to further reiterate the dehumanization that comes in war, like that uniform sequence at the beginning. All Quiet is not the kind of movie I would choose to watch if it weren't for this video. I have a marshmallow soul and a graham cracker constitution. I put off watching this one and it turned out to be everything I feared it to be. As it should.
In Tom Slay's essay, To Be Incarnational, I love this essay by the way, everyone should read it, he talks about art produced about human tragedy and points out that it's often numbing and desensitizing. But he offers a way out. In order to be, quote, incarnational, art needs to use its capacity to engage the human senses in order to show us the essence of the human that is suffering. I'll give you an example. This is a long video, but this writing from Slay's essay is some of the best writing I've ever read, so I'm just going to read it in full. And the only way I could adequately talk about what it felt was to describe a 2-year-old boy sitting in his mother's lap. His eyes had the famine gawk of the dying, that curious sidelong stare of a bird that, perched on your windowsill, suddenly catches your eye, its stare meeting your stare or seeming to. His head lolled in his mother's lap and he seemed listless, on the verge of coma, or the apathetic drowse that precedes it. But his mother had been given, by one of the matrons of the feeding station in downtown Mog, as the old hands call it, a nutritional brisket made of vitamin-fortified peanut slurry called Plumpy Nut. And as she carefully unwrapped it, Whether from the smell or some inner alarm built into the species, he roused himself. She gave it to him. His eyes suddenly focused and he began to eat. After a few bites, as the sugars hit his bloodstream, his whole body gathered strength and he sat up, suddenly alert. He ate the biscuit slowly, and by the time he'd finished, he was taking in his surroundings, particularly the shiny silver foil that the biscuit had come in. And he took the foil from his mother and began throwing it up in the air, playing with it, recovering in a few moments because of the sugars, the instinct to play. What good was my rage then? This boy had shown me something about the starving and the dying that I hadn't known until that moment. That up until they lapse from consciousness, they're still part of their world, deeply rooted in their own attachments. They don't shed who they are, and easy pity won't help you see their individual fates and quirks of character. Nobody, until the very end at least, turns into the sharply defined ribs and swollen bellies of the news photos. When All Quiet on the Western Front is at its best, it shows us this fact, that until the dead are truly dead, they are profoundly alive with love and beauty. All Quiet uses a motif of food to help us taste a sense of home, or to taste the disparity between French and German rations, or to taste fear, or to taste gnawing hunger. But at times, All Quiet on the Western Front slips into something more akin to the news photos Slay described. One way I noticed this was in the camera work. Sometimes when Berger wants to show us the horrors of war, instead of showing the effect it has on our characters, focusing on their perspective and engaging the human senses like Slay tells us to, he just pulls a wide shot so that we can see how crazy or violent or gory it is. When we lose the sense of the character, we lose some of that human essence that other parts of this film supply so fully. In contrast, check out the car scene chase from The Batman. I know a weird comparison, but bear with me. Every shot has either the Batman or the Penguin in it, accentuating our experience of the carnage by showing it to us as the characters feel it, not just as a crazy image to gawk at.
Matt Reeves got robbed, by the way.
The more obvious direct comparison to All Quiet is 1917, which uses its innovative technique of fashioning the entire film to look like it's one single shot to fully ground us in the main character's perspective, never letting us go. At the risk of being one of those nerds, the book was better. Without spoiling too much, the movie is just worse. The uniform sequence Mark discussed at the beginning seemed to indicate that the war wasn't just the experience of the soldiers, but the experience of an entire society, propelling soldiers forward. That was an interesting original contribution from the movie, and I'm excited to see what they did with it. But the movie doesn't complete the thought.
Number 4. I ranked Top Gun Maverick as my number 3, Nitish ranked Top Gun Maverick as his number 6. Top Gun Maverick is the best Gun Maverick, and I love this movie so much. It truly feels as though Maverick has kind of mastered film as a medium, which feels like a lot for what might seem to be a standard action blockbuster. But I would argue that it is just as valid to continuously fine-tune and refine tried and true concepts and styles as it is to come up with something new and groundbreaking. Maverick is just superbly well done, with its jaw-dropping sights, both off and on the ground, and amazing flying sequences which are, more often than not, actually happening. Maverick is, in my opinion, the best looking movie on this list, without question. I did not like the original film at all when it came to everything from its grungy, sweaty aesthetic, Tom Cruise's main character's transcendent levels of arrogant smarm, and a story that seemed to reward said main character for his worst traits. It was too 80s for me. Top Gun Maverick, on the other hand, was the perfect amount of 80s for me. Though Maverick still maintains a bit of his arrogance here, and near allergic reaction to any hint of authority, it is in service of a far more noble goal, to save these talented new recruits, to train them to survive a mission that would otherwise kill them if he just kept to the books. Now, give him a personal and complicated past with one of these new recruits, and this is a recipe for compelling drama. You do not even have to see the original in order to watch the sequel. You can just jump into Maverick blind and catch you up on everything you need to know pretty organically. Top Gun Maverick is not just an action blockbuster, it is the action blockbuster, and it is more than deserving of being here with the best of 2022. Personally, there's a huge divide between this and my number 4.
I have a really good friend who's a professional philosopher. She's a genius, maybe the smartest person I know, and I know a lot of really smart people. Mark not one of them.
I put all my stats into my good looks.
Last year, she recommended to me The Green Knight, which was my favorite movie of the year, a searing meditation on morality and God a la Augustine. And when I asked her what her favorite movie of this year was, I was expecting something similar. Instead, she told me it was Top Gun Maverick. I was surprised. And then I watched the movie, and then I wasn't surprised. Mark was right, y'all. This movie is insane. It's so good, it does nothing wrong. Every plot point manages to wring out a few more fathoms of emotional depth that you didn't think a big budget blockbuster like this would manage to touch. The dialogue is whippy and crisp. The production is insane. You can tell that they were actually flying planes in all of the plane scenes, and it's so impressive and such a testament to the value of practical effects in the modern CGI flooded landscape. I blame Marvel. Claudio Miranda's cinematography is so impressive. It's such a shame that he got robbed. It's almost as good as Greg Fraser's from The Batman.
Who also got robbed, by the way.
It was so good that when this film tied with All Quiet on the Western Front, like we talked about, I texted Mark and I just told him that we should put Top Gun Maverick on top. The reason is simple. For All Quiet, the book was better, but this film is the best possible version of itself. Executed par excellence.
Number 3. I ranked Tar number 4, Nitish ranked it number 2. Last time on MapjStudios, I reviewed Tar in 250 words, and I gave the movie a 7 out of 10. I was impressed with the filmmaking, and especially impressed by Cate Blanchett's performance, who has cemented herself as probably the best working actress of our modern day. But I found the story itself to be underwhelming. In response, my rival, Nitish, wrote an in-depth review explaining why I was wrong. Check out his review here if you want to see it. I won't judge you. Now, with Nitish's unique perspective in mind, I rewatched this movie with an open mind, fully expecting to be unmoved. Yeah, nah, it was better the second time. He was right. Oh, that one hurt. Oh, that one hurt to say. Tar is a beautifully done movie made with such godly clockwork precision that it almost feels fragile, as though I could somehow break it. It is probably the best version of what it could be. However, though I found the movie intellectually stimulating and artistic, I guess, I struggled to connect with the movie at an emotional level. Tar is kind of a cold movie, by design. It works as the kind of movie you can analyze shot by shot in order to compare and contrast differing interpretations and whatnot. It's the kind of movie you can easily write academic papers about. I admire that. But I felt personally disconnected. I guess that has not changed.
So I didn't feel disconnected like Mark did, at all. In the opening scene of the film, Tar talks about her approach to conducting music by, air quotes, great men from history, while understanding that a lot of them were actually just really people. She says that if you're going to partner with Mahler on his Fifth Symphony, the first thing you must do is try to understand that very complex marriage, referring to Mahler's marriage to Alma. And that idea applies to this film too. The film Tar, like Mahler's Fifth, is, again, air quotes, high art. The kind of thing you pretend to like in a college admissions essay. But Tar is introspective about its status as art, and makes a broader argument about art itself. Lydia Tar positions herself as an opponent of cancel culture in the classroom, saying that you shouldn't judge art by the nationality or creed of the artist who made it. But the film Tar and Tar herself, I think, are much more nuanced. Art is an exploration of a person's soul, a neatly wrapped package from a frozen moment in time that contains the totality of an artist's person, if you're there to receive it. Transform it into an explication of past deeds and an exploration of past intentions. So Tar plays Mahler's Fifth fast, as an exploration of young love. Her assistant, however, reminds her that Mahler's young love in question had valid reasons for resenting his patriarchal, domineering approach. Tar just demurs. And the film Tar is similar to this frame tale of this discussion over Mahler's Fifth. It starts off as a masterful piece of clockwork, like Mark describes, going fast, the same way that Tar plays it, showing us Tar at the peak of her powers, exacting, precise, charismatic, totally in control. But then it shows her the ways she abuses her power, her banal pleasures and desires, the way that she is far more animal than the manicured version of herself that she puts on like a mask. And that is precisely the point. In order to appreciate Mahler's Fifth, you need to appreciate the flawed human who was Mahler. And to appreciate the film Tar, you need to appreciate the character Lydia Tar, lapsing before our very eyes. This film is perhaps the most snooty and arty of the bunch, but it's also nearly the most human, showing us how art and humanity are inextricably linked, about how the best art is firmly rooted in human emotions. In another year, I think Tar would have been my favorite film. In this year, well, we'll get to that.
Number 2. I ranked The Banshees of Inisherin as my number 2. Nitish ranked it number 3.
So I'm curious to hear Mark's thoughts on this film, because while I love it very deeply and felt deeply moved by it, I didn't walk away from it super compelled, I guess. It's phenomenally acted and well written, don't get me wrong. Colin Farrell is my personal pick for Best Actor, and in another year I would have given Carrie Condon as the Best Supporting Actress, but this is a pretty stacked year. And the script is wonderful and excellent and brilliant, because it's at once sharp, playful, morose, sympathetic, and hateful. This film is rich, and it contains a lot. Some have suggested that it's an allegory for the Irish Civil War, or Civil War generally, and I think there's something there. The film manages to depict a futile, foolish anger more successfully than any other film I've watched. It also, perhaps, has broader things to say about one's purpose in life. Siobhan and Colm's arc are really fascinating on that account. The artists desperately trying to achieve something in a space they fear cloistered by, haunted by the presence of their own mortality. But the real value of Banshees isn't a single message, I think, but something more gestalt. Banshees uses precious few brushstrokes to paint a portrait of human emotion that is chock full. I don't know if I like this film much less than Mark did, just that I liked another movie slightly more, but I suspect this film will grow on me, casting shadows on my mind that I can't exactly see through, but I can nonetheless appreciate.
I have already gushed about how McDonagh, in what is easily his best work, uses such a simple premise to create a complex and highly entertaining tragic comedy with a whole lot of twists and turns and unexpected feelings of all sorts. One of my new favorite pastimes is to show people this movie and just watch their faces. I am legitimately dreading the day I run out of friends who have not already seen this movie. I'm gonna be so bored. If Gun Maverick is the best looking movie amongst these nominees, I think Banshees wears best screenplay like a custom suit. But McDonagh has improved remarkably as a filmmaker too, giving us remarkably jaw-dropping landscape shots and making especially great use of natural light. And windows too, to just hammer home that feeling of loneliness. Chef's kiss, this is why I love movies. I think these performances do so much for the movie too. Colin Farrell as lead R. Nice Guy is remarkably compelling, playing a main character who is simultaneously sympathetic and frustrating, but I want to give special attention to Brendan Gleeson, who does a lot to suggest a level of depth and roundedness that might not be as apparent from the script alone. I don't want to give it away, but his line about miniature donkeys just riggedy wrecked me, dog. Easily the line of the year. Legit question, squad. Who do you relate to most here, Patrick or Colm? I personally related to Colm more than I might have liked. Perhaps it's the aspiring artist in me. Or the jerk. I'm also a jerk.
I also related to Colm a tad bit more, but true friendship, Mark, goes beyond petty bickering such as this. We will always be the best of friends, won't we?
I don't want to be your f***ing friend anymore!
Oh gosh.
Number 1. Nitish and I both ranked Everything Everywhere All at Once as our number 1. Everything, everywhere,
all the time.
Don't care how, I want it now. EL had to be my number 1. It is my favorite movie of the year, and very rarely do my personal preferences actually correlate with a Best Picture nom, nonetheless a potential win. So I gotta enjoy the moment. EL has also cemented itself as one of the most beloved movies of all time, and I think one of the most influential. I have also talked about this movie a lot, but I'm happy to do it again. EL casts a lot of attention on otherwise overlooked talents. Michelle Yeoh is back with a vengeance. She did not have to go that hard, but she nails every comedic and action bit, and sells every emotion. She truly elevates this movie. And I swear if Ke Huy Quan and Stephanie Su go unnoticed after this movie, then I am ready to declare Hollywood a failed experiment, and we should go back to the clearly superior medium of mime. This is the kind of genre fun I love, but it also manages to be deep. But it also manages to not be preachy. But it also manages to be bombastic and life-changing, and I would say that lightning struck just right, but that would do a disservice to the talent and the intentionality behind the film world's most exciting dynamic duo. Everything Everywhere All at Once is from the brains of the Daniels, who are fairly new to the filmmaking scene. EL is their sophomore effort after their 2016 directorial debut, Swiss Army Man, but prior to this, they were most known for their work on music videos.
Take Burn down for what?
Yeah, that one. You can see how this movie benefits as a collaborative effort. From what I can tell, don't hold me to this, Scheinert has a background in improv comedy and specializes in giving their movies that trademark goofiness, surrealism, and whack job energy, while Kwan specializes in maintaining the heart and the philosophy. Everything Everywhere All at Once and Swiss Army Man could not have worked in the specific way they do without any of these Daniels. Everything Everywhere All at Once gives us a big blockbuster feel and a small indie charm, all at the same time. It truly does kind of feel like everything, and who wouldn't want that? Not to mention all of its now iconic visuals and sequences that are sure to have made their mark in popular culture. I can clearly imagine a new swarm of movies, studio and indie, being inspired by Yao and attempting to replicate its style. I don't know if these new filmmakers can pull it off. Heck, I don't know what the Daniels will even do next, but this is legitimately exciting territory and I am on the edge of my seat.
There are two Borges stories that come to mind when I watch this film. The first is The Garden of Forking Paths. It's a multiverse story too. In it, a Chinese man named Yu Sun is impressed into espionage against the British by the Nazis in World War II. He finds the job alienating and dehumanizing, in large part due to the racism towards his people. He has to kill a man named Stephen Albert, who, it turns out in an extraordinary coincidence, is a scholar specializing in the writings of Yu Sun's distant ancestor named Sui Pen. Sui Pen wrote an extraordinary book, in which each protagonist makes every possible choice simultaneously. The idea here is that the book captures all of the possibilities of life, and right before he kills Albert, Yu Sun sees for himself the multifold possibilities of reality, in some of which Albert was a friend, in which Yu Sun led a happy life, in which he wasn't an honorless spy, and these torment him. These images of what could be are painful. The Garden of Forking Paths is perhaps the OG multiverse story, illuminating the extraordinary depth of possibility in every human life, but this story's end, like all stories' ends, is tragic. It ends in death. Yu Sun, sitting in a British prison the day before his execution, speaks to this. He does not know. No one can know. My endless contrition and my weariness. For the first bit of Yao, I felt Yu Sun's weariness in Michelle Yeoh's Evelyn, and I felt my own weariness reflected on screen. Life was an endless parade of failures, every turn revealing another opportunity to fall short. Images of success careened in my head as heights to which I would never reach. To Yu Sun, they showed him just how low he'd fallen, and every Evelyn whom our Evelyn draws from is more talented, more accomplished, more secure, more happy. But then Yao turns into another Borges story. In this one, a man named Adam finds a people named the Urns who have a great tradition of poetry composed of just a single word. Adam hears a poet lauding the king with this single word, which he's unable to catch. Nonetheless, inspired, Adam goes on to explore the world. He takes on a variety of life paths and places, being, quote, oarsman, slave merchant, slave, woodcutter, robber of caravans, cantor, assayer of deep water and end of metals. But having failed to hear the word itself, he's dissatisfied, and he tries to find it in everything he does. Eventually, he confronts an Urn poet, and tries to ask for the word, but the poet asks two questions. First, he asks, did you often sing in those lands? Adam says no. He grew estranged from singing. Second, he asks, what were you given by the first woman you slept with? Adam answers, everything. And the poet reveals, I too have been given everything by life. Life gives all men everything, but most men do not know this. And the poet speaks that one word, wonder. Everything Everywhere All at Once teaches us that we have everything. Yao teaches us to live with wonder. Each of the paths Evelyn goes through ends in tragedy. Everyone she meets and does battle with has dark and tortured pasts. But Evelyn learns, and she's able to see the beauty in every moment of life. In their final fight, Jobu Tupaki attempts to collapse the world into an empty void of meaningless. She says that time and all its possibilities leads to nothing. But when Evelyn climbs the stairs fighting off foe after foe, she doesn't beat them with violence, but with an understanding of who they are, exposing herself to the beauty of each of their lives, no matter how it manifests. And her victory comes as the result of her understanding of what Ke Huy Quan's extraordinarily performed Wayman Wang teaches her. That he would have been happy just doing laundry and taxes with Evelyn. That he was happy through every moment of their laundromat, sweeping the floor, humming. That he was happy, sticking googly eyes on everything. That when he saw the good side of things, he was not being naive. In a world like that of the Garden of Forking Paths, with its endless contrition and weariness, optimism is strategic and necessary. This movie shows us that there is always something to love. Even in a stupid, stupid universe where we have hot dogs for fingers, we get very good with our feet. Everything, everywhere, all at once, does nothing short of giving us everything, reminding us that we already had it, reminding us of the wonder in the world. And for this, it's a perfect movie, and the Academy would be fools not to recognize it as the best picture of the year.
We forgot to film an outro, so... yeah, like and subscribe.